Everybody's just munching Steve, and this is a phenomenal. Typically, it'd be CEO, but you can call brain power CEO. And Derek Ham is truly a genius in our community, someone we should recognize. I think of Pharrell and the idea of being in academics and having the ability to bring both for technology and entertainment together. Welcome to CEO in this whole brain match with a dear brother who is committed to transformation of our community. How are you?
Nice. Munson, thank you so much. Nice to be here. Nice to chat with you. I appreciate the platform that you have created for our culture to share ideas and share insight and innovation. So thank you for having me.
No, thank you. When you think about your movement, the design of computation, you think about young hustlers who are really listening to Jay-Z. Instead of being on the block, why should we really be thinking about how can we come hang out with you on Carnegie Mellon? And why should more of us want to rock the block at MIT?
So, the tech space is really broad. I think a lot of people sometimes they see technology, emerging technology, and they just feel, oh, it's super daunting, or I got to have all these degrees, and where do I even start? And what I love about how I approach technology and what I try to tell even young people is that, hey, man, never before has the floor ever been so low. Never before has the ceiling ever been so high. There are so many entry points of where you can come in to make media, to make games, to make various forms of entertainment. And it's just about connecting you to that right avenue to come in. But once you're in, that's where the innovation happens. It's like making a game today or playing with AI to make a short video or to play with music. We're seeing a boom in creativity, and it's a new thing. It's a new space. In a lot of ways, it's that what I said, it's that lowering that barrier to entry. And so this is the time to not be afraid. It's the time to jump on in. And it's beautiful to see those who are early adopters trying to do that right now. But I'm like, jump on in the water. Come on.
Yeah, but when you think about it, you're a cool brother. You, Virgil Abloh, guys like you are creating rooms and spaces inside places. So it's not so simple when I think about a brother like you who sees architecture. Why architecture? For those that don't know, that you're creating spaces and lived in environments, and why? And why is it important for us to even imagine ourselves doing that?
So yeah, that's, my first degree. I went to Hampton University, HBCU, got a degree in architecture. And that was my first kind of place where I saw an intersection between creative arts and technical ways of thinking. And in a lot of ways, that's that emergence, right, of being able to think about beauty, aesthetics, form, and movement, and then also understand that there's some rules to it. There's some math to it. There's a science behind it. And where those things converge is where we see some of these emerging things. I left architecture and went to virtual reality because I saw something special about storytelling and being in a headset and telling stories that intersect between what you would call a game versus an interactive film, and begin to work in those spaces. But again, like ultimately, we're living in a unique time where we don't have to be so siloed in our skill set. So you can get that degree in architecture and see how it transfers over to another space. You could enter computer science and then start making games, start making movies. Like, this is a time where we're seeing a lot of collaboration across multiple disciplines. But again, just finding that entry point and staying focused is what I feel, to get into that entry point and start making your moves.
When you think entertainment technology center, why and how? Obviously, if you haven't gone to Carnegie Mellon, describe for people what's happening in that environment. I know it was so long ago, I was on Carnegie Mellon's campus, and IBM had just built a building on the campus.
Yeah.
It's not a space where thinkers always haven't been.
Right. So, as I'm talking about the way things converge and interdisciplinary, people working across from different fields, 25 years ago, Carnegie Mellon created the Entertainment Technology Center. And this came from a professor from computer science on one hand, another professor from the arts and from actually drama. And you think about those two and you're like, well, what do they have to do with each other? And a lot of college campuses would say, what do they have to do with each other? And at Carnegie Mellon, there's like, let's take an experiment. Let's put these camps together and see what emerges. And when they created this and you started recruiting young artists with young people from computer science, you get the programmers and the artists on the same wavelength, singing the same song, new things started to happen. And we would see projects emerge in the gaming sector, new types of games, new ways to play games, location-based entertainment, things that we're seeing in theme parks, things that are on the stage, heavily experimental work that's now even today, we're ushering and playing with AI and robotics on the entertainment lens. So you think about what we're seeing in robotics. Yeah, we're seeing it to optimize and work in warehouses. But I'm like, well, what happens when you put that robot on the stage? What happens when it's a co-performer? So the ETC Entertainment Technology Center is a playground for us to ask those types of strange questions that go beyond just the technical aspect of it. It's the artistry of it. It's the aesthetics of it. I would even dare say it's the swagger of it to make these things come to life.
You know, you mentioned robotics for all of our community. Where do you, and if you would, echo for them how we should be thinking of robotics as a co-intelligence partner for achieving things we've never imagined?
Yeah, I mean, you can just sit back and look at the price point of what robots cost, whether they're humanoid forms or whether they're small little things that roll around a kitchen floor. The cost of these things are dipping dramatically. And before we know it, the cost of a humanoid robot will be cheaper than buying a vehicle. We're almost there now. And so first of all, we can't say, well, that's just going to be for the rich and wealthy. Like this is something that we're going to see in so many different spaces, but not to be afraid, not to look at this and say, oh, it's going to instantly take jobs away or it's going to instantly do things. This is where we can ask, what new things can we create with it? What new experiences, what new affordances can we have in interacting and playing with it? And so I'm always focused on the new. And I think that's how we need to approach it. I think the spirit of entrepreneurship, the spirit of innovation, how we know how to take something. Records weren't meant to be scratched, yet we scratched them and made a new tune to them. So when we talk about robots, what can they do to play and interact with them? We just got to get our hands on them, start hacking with them, playing with them, interacting with them, and not be afraid to approach it that way instead of what sometimes Hollywood approach of like they're gonna either take all our jobs or take over our lives. And the other important thing is, I think when you understand how these things are trained and the data systems that we use to like input into them for how they move, how they interact, it's really important for us to have a broad cultural diversity approach in the space. It's like, who's training these things? How do they move? How do they sing? How they dance? We have to make sure that we're in the room, so there's an understanding of a broader perspective of humanity that we're teaching them basically to play and interact with us. And so that's really important, I think, for people of color to be in the space, to be upfront, the same things that we've always been saying about emerging technology.
You know, when we think about emerging technology, but people really describing AI as a species, you know, you see that. Why should people really be putting on as much AI as possible and learning how to use just the idea of not just prompting, but AI in general for all those capacities? Because it's more than just write your paper. It's beyond that.
Right, right. I mean, what we have to understand is, start looking at the systems that exist to make and to interact. And, that goes back to, you mentioned that term design computation. Design computation is really a step back to say any creative, any design aspect has a system of rules and things that articulate the behavior. Now, once we automate that, we talked about optimization, we talk about scaling things. So I think fundamentally first, we have to start thinking in a way of the tool of the time. If I had more time, if more people could do this task, if I could optimize and just be reflective on your daily activities, like what are the things that you do if you think like if I had that optimized and I had a partner tool to help do those things, like what would that look like? And start thinking about optimization will then allow you to begin to see those pockets and those moments where this would be great if I could intersect this and this. And these things even go to like broader wide world solutions. You know, you start thinking about food waste, for instance. Think about how much food we're throwing out of kitchens, food after parties, food. Wow, what would it be if we could optimize that and food could be shared with people who didn't have food? And we see this done on smaller scales, but that's the first start of the way we should start thinking about AI as a tool for optimization to allow us to do more, to analyze larger sets of data, to do things bigger and broader than what we have human hours in a day. I mean, once you start thinking like that, I think that light bulb starts to click on. And I've seen this with exercises with young kids in K-12, just that simple prompt about optimization and scalability, you get crazy ideas and ways of thinking. Now, the idea to actually training those modules to do that, yes, that's the work, that's the labor. Maybe that inspires some young kid to go to school and work on that specific issue. But it's an adaptive way of thinking about these things is the first way.
You know, we think about, Copilot. We've got major organizations, and they named it Co for a reason. There have been lots of Co everything. Do we need as a community to really think about our architecture of how we're going to leverage the idea of AI, the idea of computation? I mean, just the whole, you're going to have something to assist you. So you might as well be trying to find agents and all the assistants technologically that will help you in your diet. Like there's something waiting to help you right now at this very moment.
Yeah, and to get there, it's about sharing knowledge and sharing information. I think there are a lot of companies that are betting on the lack of knowledge, where they want to come in and swoop in and package it and try to make you pay for it as a service. And there's so many people are like, well, pause before you start shelling out money and you just become a consumer. Understand it first and understand like we could find ways to build these things ourselves and be the person then collecting the fees. So it's about slowing down and fully understanding before a bunch of middlemen start coming in, asking you to pay their money to do these things. And so I think it's a holistic knowledge has to happen, has to hit the communities, have to start thinking, raising questions about optimization, understanding what data is in the first place, understand things like privacy. That's a whole other issue about before you click on that, accept those terms, quick on your new tool, like that literacy of understanding what you're giving away and understanding like you could get that new thing and click beneath the text, no, do not take my data. And so part of this is a literacy as well, just getting into the communities, getting people to understand what these things are, and just the broader terms of how we approach these new changes.
Thanks for that. We got broad changes, but we've got a whole community that if you gave them a prescription to take this today. These are 4 things that listening, hearing my voice, and the intersection of both Kendrick's energy and your adoption to your phone, you can create a world that is waiting for you. What would the 4 things you want to introduce them to that you may not have heard on the latest hot radio? And currently, YouTube may not be offering them as a solution to their thought process in cool.
Yeah, it's a lace question there. Well, one thing I would start with this. People have to remember a lot of these companies need you. You don't need them. Like first start with that. Even how do we get here in the first place? They've been collecting your data for years. So first understand as the power of a consumer, You have choice and they need you. There's a whole reason why they're always like, would you mind if we, look at your phone? Would you mind if we collect this on the back end? They need you. And that would be the starting point. Understand your power. And then as a consumer, that you're not just at the mercy, that you have some control, you have some say on it. The second thing that I would say is really be open to what's out there and who the makers are. Before you adapt the next system that's thrown at you because of advertisement dollars had said, this is the AI tool to use, or this is the thing to tool, do some homework. Some of even Black-owned companies, whether they're game makers or new tool sets, maybe haven't pushed out the marketing dollars. So that's not the first thing that you see on your TikTok, Instagram and stuff. So we have to do some work to understand, like, just because you see that ad, shouldn't be the first thing you click on. And three, what I'm saying is like, start to understand some overarching concepts. Like, what is data? Like, start there. Like, what does that mean? People throw that out there. Like, understand what data is, what types of data exist, where they're kept, who holds these things. In a lot of ways, Munson, it's like financial literacy, the way we're starting to talk about tech and data. And it's like, there are people who just, get a paycheck, put in the bank, spend, and not understanding what's happening in the background of the financial system in America. That's the same thing that we could say with data and tech, and things are moving so fast. So we have to slow down, start understanding some of the basic concepts. Who are the major players? Who owns things? Where is it flowing? So those would be my high level, like, starting points that I would say that's where we need to be. That's the roadmap that we could be on, and adapting our ways of thinking.
I love that. And the idea, when you say, I am a man, this whole brainstormers, give us a view on where that came to you at, and then why is it important?
So when I first got in the VR game and wanted to start telling stories, I immediately gravitated towards, how do we use technology to keep Black history alive? Yes, we want our kids to read. We want our kids to read books and understand history. And yes, there's documentaries, but just kind of moving forward, I put on a VR headset and I knew this would be a powerful way to preserve history, to communicate and tell stories about history. And so the two projects that you're mentioning, the I'm a Man project and the Barnstormers, is about Negro League baseball, were both my early steps in saying, we want to experience Black history, not knowing that we were entering to a time that where they want to pull down monuments, where they want to pull out history and pull away from these rich narratives, more impassionate than ever, to like keep doubling down and tell Black history through emerging technology. And so what we're seeing with VR now, augmented reality, to be able to tell a story like this, put on a headset, you experience it from a first person perspective. What I find what's great about it is it helps the generations have conversations. I've seen younger kids come out of these experiences and want to go talk to grandma a little bit more about what that was like, because they have something that is experiential, and it's one-to-one versus just watching a movie or reading a book. They kind of lived it, if you will, just a little bit of the sense. And so I think it's powerful for generational conversations. It's powerful for keeping history alive. And again, we have to keep fighting for our history to be kept, preserved, and told. And it's amazing that in 2025, we're still having these conversations about what the narrative is and who has the power to shape it.
Yeah, thank you for that. But I really want to make sure that we understand how important, what you're doing, and more of us need to figure out to take up spaces in augmented reality, to grow the capacity. What do you think those opportunities are? Because many people are listening and then they aren't certain augmented reality is for us. That's for him. He's at Carnegie Mellon. But where should we lean in, and how should we really know that we've got to create products here just like we create musical products?
Right. And it may not be augmented or VR for others. Some might be playing with a new AI tool. I think we need to start looking at our own past history as a form of intellectual property, like own it. talk about very boldly Negro League history, talk about civil rights, talk about Black cowboys, talk about Black World War II heroes, talk about, like, we have to grab those and then find playful ways using the tools today, whether you could use AI tools for animation. We have to start being reflective and telling our narratives, shaping it, forming it, but using the tools out today. So AR and VR are just two of the many onslaught of new platforms that are just prime for storytelling, and we need Black storytellers to step up and to be bold to make things on these platforms. But we also need the consumers, we need the audiences, we need those who are being vocal to say, I want more. I want more of these things, because that then shows that pipeline of, we make stuff, our community is fed, and now we are empowered to then feed them more.
Super. When you dream big dreams like you do, if you could preserve somebody beyond that and actually bring them back to life on all the AI, which is kind of what I see, what do you see being brought back? I mean, you've got African civilizations that were once talked about, where you could begin to ultimately hear, feel, and have people walk through experiences that have been omitted from our truth.
Yeah, well, the first thing I will always say when we're doing these experiences is remind people, as real as they could feel visually and sensory. Let's always remember that this is still an interpretation and a copy. We can't ever really go back in time, and so I never want to presume that the technology is so good that I could really make you feel a certain moment in time one to one, that there's always going to be something lost. But if that being said, and what it can do, I learned when I was working on the Negro League Baseball project, the narrative was more than our history is about suffering and what we didn't have. And when you start looking at something like Negro League Baseball and you see these guys were making big money, Satchel Paige, Josh Gibson were making big money, and they were superheroes, and they were the heroes of their community, and kids wanted to be them. That's a different form of history, other than a bunch of sad players who were just were broken down and were not afforded the chance to be in the majors. Like, that's the type of heroism. When we start looking at the kingdoms in Africa, you start looking at kings and princes and royalty of the system that we have. There are so many aspects of history that have been masked and edited out, where that is a game changer for the mindset for kids today. And I'm speaking for the Black community. Like, our kids need to be able to look back and feel a sense of pride and a sense of achievement, that, like, it wasn't all just a road of slavery and suffering. That's important. We need to preserve it and talk about how we overcame that. But there are these pocketed moments where you see amazing success. And that's what I think I like to focus on, to really talk about what that meant for you to change your way you're thinking about where you came from.
When you said that, I was literally in Tuskegee in a laboratory with George Washington Carver, thinking of all of the times that he wanted to be in that space, letting his time go, thinking of all the things that he could create, and imagining him talking and saying to another young person, take the time to invent. Make sure you have 50 patents before you die. All the imaginary ideas of him being there. And imagine at some point, young kids that do travel to Tuskegee could walk in an immersive place where they could now, if there's his voice recorded, replicate his voice in every thought that he ever wrote down, so that we could hear that and study it.
I mean, yes. You're talking that, and I'm like, I want to put that headset on and experience something like that. Yeah, you're nailing it. We can see this as a way for intergenerational, multi-generations coming together, talking, communicating, and we see it's a loss right now, unfortunately, in our culture. We're losing stories, and not just the big stories of the big historic figures. The historic figures that are just maybe in your neighborhood, in your community. Being new to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, I'm learning so much about the stories of this city. I'm learning about places like the Crawford Grill, which is still a preserved building with just a plaque. But if you walk by it and you don't know, some of the greatest jazz musicians came to Pittsburgh and played here. Negro League baseball players, this is where they would eat. This was the best restaurant in town for Black folk. Where are those stories? We need the small and large stories told and preserved. And if we could use technology to keep them alive, which what I've been trying to do in my work, that just sets a precedent for others to do the same thing.
Well, you're doing it in your work 1000%. I mean, not even trying. The effort is there. You made the effort. Barnstormers is a true reality. So thank you. It's a gift to all of us. If you were giving a speech back at Hampton, which has a great art collection, or if you were giving it at Howard and you were making the commencement speeches at 10 HBCUs and obviously a few others at Harvard where you placed your hat and passed through, what would you challenge the next generation during commencement to see as a future for their lives?
Yeah. Wow. I think about, and as I'm thinking about this, I'm like, what would I tell to my younger self? That you should, I know this sounds cliche, but dream big. Like, dream the dream that's so scary that you're like, I don't know how I can do that. And that's the dream you focus on. And the path there is not about hiding it. And it's like, I have this secret dream. It's about sharing with it. It's about talking with others. The people who will discredit you or laugh at you, it's okay. That might hurt, but you're eventually going to find the people who say, oh, that's great. Oh, I have something to contribute to that. Don't dream in very safe spaces. Don't dream in just the thing that you can see. Like, really challenge yourself to have those big visions that are scary because you don't know how on God's earth you would ever achieve that. And those are the exciting dreams, and then begin that path. It goes back to the classic film heroes, the hero's journey, the schema that we see in a lot of films, the hero's journey. It's like they wake up, something's different, and they start on this path. Don't stay in this safe mindset of, yes, I know I could probably get that type of job, make that type of career, do that type of work. At least have one big scary dream that the only way there is going to be through partnership, hard work, a constant pursuit for it. Dream that big dream. Yeah.
Super. Well, thank you for kicking it with me. I look forward to Dr. Derek Ham catching up with you. Congratulations on all you do to preserve and perfect our history so we have a better vision of ourselves and a timeless reality for who we are and who we can be. I'm Munson Steed, hanging out with my dear brother, Derek Ham, here at CEO to CEO.
Thanks, Munson.